And almost in every sense, it would be more probable to say that, like in the example of the resurrection, it's more probable that there's another explanation besides the miracle hypothesis. And an example he gave was, let's say you have like snow, and you see imprinted in the snow like a hoof print. It would make more sense to say that something natural like a horse did that than a unicorn. And he said, even further, sometimes you can subjectively set up a explanation like a unicorn. We could, after the fact, make God an explanation, but how do you say that that's the best explanation?
Yeah.
That's you all the way.
I know. So the obvious response is that, yeah, let's have that conversation, because I do think it's more probable that Jesus rose from the dead than that the disciples lied, or they hallucinated, or any natural explanation you can bring up.
You know, and I think if all the New Testament scholars in the world were polled and asked to name who they think, in their opinion, are the top 5 New Testament scholars in the world, I think the name Dale Allison would appear on those lists more than any others.
Absolutely, let's have that conversation, because the example where you have like the horse in the snow, yeah, it's more probable given the limited data we have on that it was something natural. But when you have the wealth of data surrounding the resurrection, then you can make a very good case that something supernatural or something miraculous did happen.
So first of all, there's a problem for evangelical scholars, because I don't think any of these people are on traditional theories of authorship independent of each other. You don't want them to have post-event contact. You want to have truly independent witnesses. As far as I can tell, on the traditional theories of authorship, all these people are talking to each other all the time, so they're not truly independent in any way at all.
And just trying to explain it away as the disciples lied, or they concocted a conspiracy and stole the body, or they hallucinated, it doesn't fit the data.
But with regard to the physicality of the appearances, it makes sense to me that even if those things did not happen, it would not be unexpected to find them in the text, because they serve apologetical elements. And in Luke, this serves an apologetical motif, that is, Jesus is not a ghost. And of course, that's one of the things people have always said. The disciples saw a ghost, or they hallucinated, or so on. And I would expect early Christians to come up with a counter to that at some point.
So absolutely, I want to have that conversation with them where they were like, well, why wouldn't it be more probable if someone lied? And the obvious answer is to say no, like call their bluff.
We do know from history that sometimes groups have taken prophecies that were not fulfilled, at least to everybody who doesn't belong to the group, and claimed that they were fulfilled.
Call them out on that and say, no, the reason I'm a Christian is because the data indicates it was a resurrection. It was something miraculous.
One of my historical critical conclusions is that the story in Matthew 27:51 through 53 is not history. So you would agree with that. But I've argued that Matthew thought it was. And if Matthew thought it was, that means you have what you could only call fiction in the canonical stories themselves.
And so when you get into these things, you got to remember a couple things. An explanation has to have explanatory scope and explanatory power. It's got to explain all the facts and well. So the least number of assumptions, putting aside your worldview. The resurrection has the least number of assumptions. With naturalistic explanations, you got to posit Paul had some weird hallucination and the disciples had some sort of big group mass hysteria going on.
I come back to this again and again and again. So you take the appearance to the 500. You just ask any question and you don't know the answer. Who were these people? Were they in the south? Were they in the north? Were they in Galilee? Were they in Jerusalem? But what they saw, how many of these people knew Jesus really well? How did they see him? Really, how did they see him? 500 people, that's a lot. Now it's got to be an approximation, but was there a receiving line? Was there a jumbotron? Some of the church fathers actually think this must have been something like Acts, a heavenly vision. So he's somewhere up in the clouds and, they can see him at once.
Why don't we just let's be agnostic and just look at the data as objectively as we can and see where it leads.
But if I look, for example, at Matthew's infancy narrative, I see very little history. I don't think the massacre of the infants is history. I don't think the star is history, and so on.
In most instances, it's going to be something natural. The resurrection is different, and you cannot get away from that. And a lot of atheists don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of the data because they know they're going to start getting ad hoc. They're not going to put some plausible explanation out there.
Mytho-history, if you mean that they are a combination of history and legend, and are mythological in that sense, then yes, I think the Gospels qualify on that score.
So it's most plausible. It's the least ad hoc. So yeah, just call their bluff and say, let's go into the data. Let's absolutely, because I definitely think the resurrection is more probable than if the disciples lied.
Well, at some point we realize the Gospels don't agree on everything, and at some point we realize they're not pure history. There's more that is going on there.